Joining us now is Gilbert Garcia, managing partner at Garcia Hamilton Associates. Gilbert, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I thought inflation was transitory. What makes you think it's going to stick around?
Well, I tell you, I'm not so sure what transitory means, but it's already been a year, and you already see many of the main components, whether it's housing, whether it's food, or anything else, are continuing their acceleration already looking forward into next year. So I think we're beyond transitory. And I also think that we're beyond the Fed's target of getting back to full employment. So in my view, the best thing the Fed can do is start tapering immediately and get out of the way of the markets so the markets can function properly.
Even without the Fed actually formally accelerating its time frame, Gilbert, is there a thought in your mind that perhaps the bond market could do the tightening itself, in that the 10-year yield could continue rising, anticipating that the Fed is behind the curve? Because Omicron, I mean, even if it doesn't have the impact here in the United States that it could have overseas, i.e. President Biden saying lockdowns are off the table, it could still really snarl global supply chains even further, causing more inflationary pressure.
There is no doubt. And in fact, let's talk about Friday, because Friday was a pretty big move. But when you're in the markets, you've got to avoid the noise. You had interest rates fall about 14 or 15 basis points. Stocks corrected about 3%. And we're already back. Stocks have made up half of that. On the bond market, we've made up about a third of that, meaning rates have gone back up about 5 basis points or so. So at the end of the day, I believe that this new variant right now, it's way too premature to push the panic button. And so in our view, everything is still in place for continued acceleration of growth, inflation to be much longer than transitory. And we think that rates are going to be resuming their levels, frankly, back to where we were before the virus. And you got to go back to 2018. Before all the trade troubles around China, rates were wrapped around 3%, and the economy was on all cylinders. So I think that's generally where rates will settle.
At what point do you think the consumer gets so pinched by inflationary pressures? Because, you believe, for one, that inflation is going to be much higher, much steeper, much sharper. And so I'm wondering, when does a consumer get pinched and therefore impact economic growth?
Well, I think it's happening now, especially for those that are on fixed incomes like our seniors or some of those in the minority community. I participated in a Thanksgiving food giveaway here in Houston, and we fed 30,000 people. It was remarkable. And we've done some of these other turkey giveaways. People were waiting in line for several hours for a turkey and for food. And so where am I going with all that? I think it doesn't make sense to focus on things like food and energy. Everybody needs to use transportation, and everybody's got to eat. So the headline inflation number is what really matters and what's important, and it's running very hot. I think we're going to still run somewhere around the high 5s or 6% into next year. I think ultimately the best thing we can do is to do that tapering much faster and to get out of the way of the bond market and let rates go to where they should go and where they need to go.
We got less than a minute, Gilbert, but what's the consequence of the Fed really being behind the 8 ball when it comes to their taper timeline, their tightening timeline, I should say?
Certainly, in my opinion, what will happen is the curve will get steeper, and ultimately, you're correct in your first question, which is if the government does not do what it needs to do, you're going to see the bond vigilantes return, and they will tighten for them. The other thing I'd like to add is when you look at South Africa and what's happening with this variant, obviously, they must have had good controls or good information to give the world that information. And I think it's critical that we recognize that rather than having travel bans, which are just going to increase the panic and is probably going to lead to others to being discouraged from sharing their data, we really need to get more vaccines there. We need to collect the data, and we really need to help them with more medical assistance.
Gilbert, thanks so much. Great to get your thoughts. Gilbert Garcia.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.